Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and tonight we're going to recap the Saints. Pretty thrilling, one person's thrilling, one person's heartbreaking victory from the night they beat the Chargers 30-27 Monday Night Football. Coming to you from Columbus, Ohio at 11:46 p.m. Eastern Time. Want to get through that game and then also go through some of the top waiver wire claims for the week. So I know there's a lot of quarterback needy teams out there now, some running back, wide receiver options. As always, want to do everything I can to get you guys set up with the right waiver additions. I feel like we've been doing a good job with this over the past few weeks, being on Mike Davis, Justin Jefferson. Let's keep the momentum going. But first, let's talk this Chargers loss to the Saints. And really, was one of these situations where definitely could have seen, if they play this game 100 times, I think the Chargers come out with the win more times than not. All the credit to Justin Herbert on, a performance that was all the more impressive when you consider that Keenan Allen was out of the game, early into the second quarter with a back injury that unfortunately kept him sidelined for the rest of it. So no Austin Eckler, no Keenan Allen. Last week, Mike Williams was out of the game early. It's just a situation where the rookie just keeps on balling. It makes me think when we do see someone like Herbert just making plays kind of despite of his supporting cast sometimes. Like, what does that say necessarily about, guys, Sam Darnold's, Josh Rosen's, Dwayne Haskins, and people that I'm not giving up on necessarily, but, we do talk about them not having, this sort of real fantasy-friendly role or just not having the help around them that's needed to succeed. You do see some of these great quarterbacks, the Deshaun Watson coming up. I know not every situation is equal, but either way, Herbert is playing great despite not having, his top performing teammates around him. So all the credit to the world with him in that. First touchdown of the game was just wild. They showed the kind of all 22 view from behind, and he literally had two free rushers coming at him. He was able to evade them both, rolled out to his right, and hit Keenan Allen with a laser for the score. Later, finds Mike Williams around the goal line for a touchdown, another one to Hunter Henry. Look, they weren't the most incredible plays you'll ever see, but both times, NFL open. Like, it wasn't like these were wide open guys, just more or less had a step, and Herbert was able to put him on him. So the arm strength on this guy, absolutely wild. Had another real beautiful connection with Jalen Guyton deep for 48 yards. And then finally, in the fourth quarter, to seemingly put things out of reach, at least for a second, or at least give him the lead, 64-yard touchdown to Mike Williams. One of those situations where he was so wide open that I was expecting to see, a pretty nice double move when they did the wide receiver cornerback only cam. In reality, Mike Williams literally just ran right past, I believe it was Patrick Robinson, and the dude clearly had a miscommunication with the safety and coverage scheme. So, 64 yards in the book for Justin Herbert, probably the easiest 64-yarder he'll get in his career. But hey, a touchdown is a touchdown is a touchdown. So even at the end in overtime, once he had to try to go down the field and get them a field goal for a tie or touchdown to win, Hunter Henry had a weird situation where he wasn't able to get his head around, even though the ball was kind of on target. And then KJ Hill passed on a little bit behind him, but it hits your hands in the NFL. You would like him to see them come down with that. So last play of the game, wasn't able to hook up for the first down with Mike Williams. He was stopped just short. Does a better ball, maybe lead him over the first down marker. Yeah, but it's hard to take away too much from Herbert with his performance. 264 yards, 4 touchdowns. Again, guy just continues to look good. At some point, we'll see a rookie floor. I thought it could be tonight. It was not. He's going to be an upside QB2 in fantasy football lands more weeks than not with this sort of usage. With the Chargers backfield, so still waiting on some of the exact snap counts to come out. Make sure you check out my Wednesday article on PFF.com, where I take stock of every single backfield around the league, break out the snaps, what to expect if someone gets hurt, and what to look forward to in the upcoming week. So make sure you take a look at that. But just from the early, look away, this was definitely a win for Justin Jackson on the game. He had a 36-yard run early on a draw where he cut to his right, made the safety miss, and just showed some real bursts out there. And look, 36 yards. Justin Jackson, the Chargers didn't have another player rack up a rush of even 10 yards. So it was a situation where, didn't see a whole bunch of bursts from the run game, except when it was Justin Jackson getting the ball. Another nice run in the fourth where he was just kind of carrying dudes for some extra yards. I saw a lot of people this week, just kind of say, all right, Kelly's going to be the early down grinder and Justin Jackson's going to be kind of the Austin Eckler scat back. And just only because of their size was that comparison even being made. Justin Jackson was the Melvin Gordon for this offense during the first 4 games, or excuse first 3 games of last season. Then Jackson himself got hurt while Melvin Gordon was holding out. So, he's only 200 pounds, but he really does run harder, and they're not afraid to use him between the tackles. So it seemed like it was about 55-45, if not a 60-40 split eventually in favor of Justin Jackson. Again, we'll get the exact numbers out later, but he was the guy, and particularly on passing downs. He ended up catching 5 balls for 23 yards on 6 targets. Josh Kelly, only 1 target, did catch it for 9 yards, but a situation where Jackson might actually be in that Austin Eckler 60-70% snaps, getting the receiving work, while it's Kelly that comes on, serves as more of the early down guy, and takes the goal line work. So we didn't see anyone actually get touches around the goal line, but when Herbert was hooking up with Mike Williams and Hunter Henry inside, the 10-yard line, it was Joshua Kelly that was on the field. So, it's one of these situations, and I think we did a good job breaking this down last week for you all, but just the kind of disparity between Kelly and Jackson was never, I think, as big as we made it out to be. I mean, when Kelly was working, getting a lot of touches and stuff, Jackson was literally hurt. So now that Jackson's healthy, we're seeing the incumbent backup in an offense play over the rookie. We've seen this just time and time again around the league this year with Gus Edwards keeping J.K. Dobbins on the bench, Jordan Wilkins briefly, keeping Jonathan Taylor from getting a little more involved. Just a situation where do not write off these incumbent backup RBs. And as we spoke about Justin Jackson, guy truly was more talented than people give him credit for. So, Herbert putting up numbers in this offense, as long as Eckler stays out, I do think Jackson is probably the more likely candidate to kind of flirt with some borderline RB2 value. Both guys are clearly going to stay involved. And I don't think either one needs to be cut right now or anything like that, or necessarily crowned, but definitely more of a 50-50 or if not 60-40 situation in Jackson's favor, I think, than we thought going into the game. Mentioned before, Keenan Allen has that back injury, so hopefully he gets better. Mike Williams, at the end of the game on the last play, seemed like he got bent back a little weird. He was staying down for a second. They showed him walking off the field later, but hopefully he can stay healthy, because my goodness, the plays this dude was making. I mean, I just wish he would take better care of himself, and it's part of what makes him so great that also makes him kind of injury prone sometimes. I mean, the guy goes up and makes these wild contested catches and falls to the ground like a freaking sack of bricks, and it's going up there with the reckless abandon and double coverage, and high pointing the ball like he did at the end of the fourth quarter over Marshawn Lattimore to give them a field goal to potentially win the game. Unfortunately hit off the upright, but yeah, truly can't say enough nice things about Mike Williams. Finished the game with 109 yards and 2 scores on 8 targets. Just truly beasting out there, and it'll be nice seeing him with Herbert, because while Rivers, he was still putting up big numbers over these last few years, that fluttering sidearm deep ball wasn't always on target when it was Williams trying to chase it down. So he's had some weird fantasy seasons back to back. In 2018, bunch of touchdowns and not that many targets. In 2019, bunch of yards and not many touchdowns on not that many targets. So hopefully, we see him and Keenan Allen, as they get healthier, really emerge as the top 2 guys in a high flying offense that this has the potential to be. So, it sucks that the Chargers lost. They are 1-4 at this point. Not exactly the season they were looking for or anything like that. But, I think Justin Herbert been far more entertaining and has been far better as a, fantasy enabler for his teammates than we expected. So, I will say that I will enjoy watching these Chargers games into the second half of the season. On the other side of the ball, the Saints, capturing a victory. Win is a win is a win. The Taysom Hill usage was just one hilarious note after another. And hey, you know what? Taysom ended up scoring the game-tying touchdown at the end of regulation. Nice little 9-yard scamper off of play action. But other than that, sheesh. And I get it. I mean, he would look like the best player on the field in that Vikings playoff game last year. Sean Payton knows more about football, and his little finger than I ever will in my entire life. Like, I get it. Taysom Hill is not bad at football per se or anything, but, is he overvalued with the contract? Doesn't make sense why they're consistently pulling Drew Brees off the field and trying to just put all this game planning around Taysom Hill instead of, I don't know, Alvin Kamara or someone. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't think anyone gets it. But you know what? That's the reality we live in. Taysom ended up with 3 carries for 13 yards and also had 3 targets. Caught 2. That was Traquan. Also had 2 targets. He did not catch either of them. So, the 9-yard touchdown run, good for you on it working. But let's try to get a little better than a 1-for-5 success rate in the future with these Taysom Hill packages. Truly hilarious seeing, the biggest moments of the game, Peyton Cone with Hill over Drew Brees. And, Brees, it was looking rough in the first half. I mean, the cries for Jameis Winston on Twitter were reaching a fever pitch. He did get going afterwards. I mean, the 2-minute drive where the Chargers just had their safeties playing back, just continuously dumping it off to Kamara, ended up with 8 catches for 74 yards. Emmanuel Sanders did a great job separating underneath, 12 catches on 14 targets for 122 yards. And Jared Cook was able to actually create some big plays. Breeze hit Cook for a 41-yard touchdown. I believe it was his longest pass in terms of air yards for a touchdown since the 2017 season. So arm isn't completely dead yet. It does have signs of a 2015 Peyton. I'm very concerned what this arm is going to look like, if they make it into January and have to, maybe travel to Green Bay or Seattle for an outdoor game. But once Michael Thomas comes back, I think we're going to see a situation where he and Kamara are so good underneath that they're probably going to make the most out of it and emerge as a double-digit win team again and again. But so it's just, again, with the Saints, can they be more when it matters? We've seen this year them really struggle to, have that same sort of offensive vibe as we've seen in the past. I think until Breeze can really force these defenses off the line of scrimmage, we're going to continue to see that. Whether or not, getting a healthy Michael Thomas back and maybe transitioning Sanders into more of a field stretcher role will work remains to be seen. So, credit to Breeze getting the win. Had a nice little fantasy night thanks to a touchdown on his little jump over the line from the 1-yard line thing he always seems to score on. And moving on to Alvin Kamara. Didn't have a ton of big plays. Only 11 carries for 45 yards and, turned to 8 catches and 74 yards, but incredible catch on a little contested wheel route they threw him in the fourth quarter trying to get there down the field. So, really big 28-yard catch and had a linebacker all over him. So, it was an unfortunate night where he wasn't able to find the end zone, as all the fantasy managers out there. I know you're expecting more, but still the undisputed league guy here. Even with Latavius Murray getting 8 carries for 34 yards, there's no doubt about, Kamara getting his 15 to 25 touches per week, with the overwhelming majority of them being receptions. Just a guy that we're going to continue to fire up as a top 3 to top 5 fantasy back, regardless of the matchup during any given week. Other than those guys, I mentioned Jared Cook, Emmanuel Sanders with a big night, and Kamara. But other than that, no one had over 35 rushing or receiving yards for the squad. Traquan Smith really ghosting out there. It was one of these situations where he looked so good the first game without Michael Thomas, and then we kind of saw that transition more towards Emmanuel Sanders. So, getting Michael Thomas back will be great for the Saints offense. Hopefully the Chargers can get Keenan Allen back before too long. These are two, I wouldn't call the Saints an entertaining offense, but at a minimum, 2 offenses that can put up some points on the board. So fun little Monday night game. Looking forward to Bills Titans on Tuesday. We'll not be doing a recap pod for that one. We will be having our regularly scheduled Wednesday game by game breakdown out with myself and PFF's own Dwayne McFarland. Also want to give a shout out to another PFF pod. PFF and Sunday Night Football's Chris Collinsworth is teaming up with one of the best players on and off the field, 49ers All-Pro corner Richard Sherman. The Chris Collinsworth podcast featuring Richard Sherman is available now wherever you find your podcasts. They'll provide the most interesting football conversation in sports every single week. And sometimes that means the discussion will venture off the field too. Additionally, Chris will be taking a dive into the game of football as he sees it, inviting in the best and brightest to talk about everything that is happening in the great game of football. Mark your calendars. You do not want to miss the best 60 minutes of insight this season. Love the stuff Chris and Richard are doing, and love that it's under the PFF umbrella. So hope you all enjoyed the Monday night game. Now I want to get on to some waiver wire thoughts. And, big thing is quarterback. If you had Dak Prescott on your squad, obviously you need to find someone else. And I would just, especially if you're in a 10, 12 single QB league. Look, on any given week, you can almost get to 18 or 20 viable quarterbacks. So this is not a situation where you want to blow your fab. Getting a solid streaming quarterback is very useful. We need, production at the position just like any other one. But I would say, just in terms of fab percentages, definitely don't blow your load on the quarterback position. We are still using that for 3-down running backs, maybe wide receivers that, can flirt with some wide receiver 2 upside, and like the Justin Jefferson, maybe Chase Claypool mode, spoiler. But, quarterback position, I would not be, going too far out of my way to get these guys, but I do think they're set up well here in the new future, and we're starting with Matthew Stafford. So on the bye last week, but we talked about this on the podcast how the first 2 weeks of the year we didn't see that same sort of gunslinger back there in 2019. Stafford led all of the NFL in average target depth. Did not see that in this season in the early going. But Kenny Galladay, came back in week 3, and you just see the average target depth rise up. Matt Stafford was at 9.3 in week 1, 8.8 in week 2, then went up to 10.2 in week 3, and finally 13.3 McCaffrey, true gunslinger levels in week 4. So again, like part of the big reason why Stafford was so effective last year was because he was given Galladay, Marvin Jones, even TJ Hawkinson, all his dope wide receivers, a lot of fantasy friendly targets downfield, and they were making the most of it. So if that's going to come back, it could come back in a big way for the whole passing game, because they got a flammable schedule here coming up. Next up is the Jaguars, then the Falcons, Colts, Vikings, football team, Panthers, and Texans. That's week 6 through 12. That is best case scenario, people. So, give me Stafford over Andy Dalton, and, moving on to him. So, yeah, with Dalton, I get it. He came out there. He looked pretty good. I think he went 9 for 11, was able to get them a win. Cowboys offense is full of playmakers, but you know what? They're also no longer full of a great offensive line. Without their starting tackles and their starting center, this is a situation that Dak Prescott made the best of and that Andy Dalton made the best of for 1.5 quarters against the Giants' kind of mediocre defense. So, Giants, they've had a rough start to the year. Maybe I'm being too harsh on their defense, but either way, expecting anything resembling QB1 production from Dalton moving forward, I just think it's a reach. Look, his career best year happened back in 2015. And Dalton, in my opinion, has always been a sum of his parts quarterback. If you can surround him with a lot of talent, you'll get a better version out of him. As we saw in the last few years with the Bengals, if you don't, it's going to be a struggle bus fest. So, in 2015, we saw him, AJ Green, Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu, actually had the healthy Tyler Eifert season, and that got him fancy QB 11 honors. He truly has never been a top 10, consistent fantasy quarterback in this league. I just have a hard time believing in the year 2020 that's going to be the case. Again, I get it. Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Gallup, Zeke, these guys are great, and a great, skill position group you want any quarterback to be surrounded by. But the offensive line is a problem. We don't even know if the Cowboys are going to keep working in the same way. Look, I know Booger and Tony Dungy have gone out there and said the Cowboys could actually be better because the new offense is going to, keep the defense off the field and this or that. Okay, obviously that's ridiculous, but there is a case to be made that having Dalton under center is that they're not going to be nearly as pass happy, and they're going to maybe not run the same sort of offense. McCarthy was very upfront about the tempo, being they want to go outscore people, score as many points as possible, run as many plays as possible. It would make rational coaching sense if they no longer run the fastest pace in the league by a good 3-4 seconds. So there are a lot of factors kind of making this Cowboys offense as fantasy friendly as it was with Dak. As the offensive line continues to kind of crumble, if the pace goes down and we just see them lean more on the run game, don't be shocked if this receiving group as a whole has a lower ceiling and floor alike. So, I get it. Again, if you're in a 2 QB league and you had Dak and you need Dalton, that's fine. But just, realize going into this week, let me get my quarterback ranks here. Going into this week, I am more willing to go with Stafford over Dalton, and mentioning that schedule moving forward, I think it's going to stay that way because the Cowboys really aren't set up all that well. And yeah, this week, Matthew Stafford, I got as my QB 14, and Andy Dalton's coming in as QB 16. So just something to keep in mind there, that, we can try to project what's going to be the best case thing for Dalton coming in this new position, but give me the guy that, actually has experience in his offense and isn't, working behind so many reserves in the offensive line in Matthew Stafford. So moving on to the running back position, Alexander Mattison. Hopefully you already have him on the squad because we've been preaching Mattison, Murray, Pollard, and Edmonds, ever since the offseason. These are the true, 3-down backups that we can fire up as a top 12 back. And yes, if Dalvin Cook is out this week with a groin injury, which we'll see, he apparently said after the game he's good. Didn't look like it was going to be a serious injury or anything, but is a situation where they're playing the 0-5 Falcons and they got a bye week and then a game against the Packers. So if they do give Dalvin a week off to get right, Mattison is going to be anyone's idea of a top 12 fantasy running back, if not, top 8, because this matchup against the Falcons couldn't be better. And just all the credit to Mattison for what he's done over these 2 seasons. Dalvin Cook over the past 2 seasons, 0.19 missed forced tackles per attempt. Mattison just beneath him at 0.17. Yards per carry, Dalvin's at 4.8. Madison's at 4.7. Yards after contact per attempt, Dalvin 3.2. Mattison 3.1. No one here is doubting that Dalvin Cook isn't better than Alexander Mattison as a real life and fantasy football player, but Gary Kubiak's RB1 has been a cheat code for the better part of the last 2, even 3 decades, if you want to go all the way back to the 90s. Right now, Mattison is the Vikings RB1 as long as Dalvin Cook is sidelined. Because of that, we're going to treat him as a fantasy RB1. Do not worry about Mike Boone, Amir Abdullah. Truly, Mattison is locked in as a 3-down back for the Minnesota Vikings as long as Dalvin Cook is on that sideline. Moving on, wide receiver position a little bit here. Have a bunch of guys that I think are possible options. So talked on the Sunday night pod a little bit. That came out Monday a little about Chase Claypool and Travis Fulgham. But I really think both these guys, you look at the situation they're in, and okay, I'm definitely targeting Claypool over Fulgham. But literally both guys, and we're talking 1-2 in the league right now in yards per route run among everyone. They're playing so well in passing games that just haven't had much success. It'd be silly to not think that these guys are going to lose usage moving forward. Chase Claypool is averaging 13.1 yards per target right now. Juju is at 7.8. James Washington is at 6.2. Deontay Johnson 5.7. I mean, that's absurd. So literally one target to Claypool is picking up twice as many yards as one to Washington or Deontay this year. I mean, and it was not just a 1 week bang. That's the thing. We see, I think when we fall into traps sometimes with these players, they have just a big 1 week and then their role goes back to normal and we don't see him pop up again. I mean, Claypool has made the most out of every single opportunity given his way so far this year. In week 1, he had that wild catch down the sideline that I believe Next Gen Stats said still was the most improbable incompletion of the ceiling. In week 2, he has the electric long 80-plus yard touchdown versus the Broncos. Week 3, he gets one catch on a fly screen from like the 20-yard line, zips past 2 guys and, gets down at the 1-yard line, nearly scores, but helps put that game away. And you look at his touchdowns, it wasn't like these things were super fluky. I think he had one where he kind of roasted the linebacker that was just based on, shouldn't have had a linebacker on him, fine. But to get a rush attempt from the 2-yard line, like they chose to give him that rush attempt, not Juju, not anyone else. They threw him a screen from that like kind of quad bunch formation that again was clearly designed for him. And the dude had another touchdown that was actually nullified by a penalty, and it's pretty questionable OPI in my opinion. So I believe he capped off that same drive with a touchdown. Not saying he should have had 5 instead of 4, but again, Claypool's been balling out all season. The opportunity is going up. Even if Deontay comes back just fine next week. I mean, you really think Deontay and Washington, while Claypool is out playing them this badly, are going to remain on the field? I think Deontay comes back, he'll probably still be out there, but very soon, very, very soon, if not next week and moving forward, I mean, I would bet it will be next week and moving forward, Chase Claypool is going to be playing as much as any other wide receiver in this Pittsburgh offense. And based on what he's done with these opportunities so far, we could be looking at consistent wide receiver 2 value more weeks than not. And yeah, so with Fulgham, I wouldn't put the ceiling quite as high. I don't think the Eagles are nearly as good as the Steelers right now. I guess we'll kind of see what happens. It was a closer game, I think, than the scoreboard suggested. But just this passing game, I have more confidence in Roethlisberger and them keeping things going than Wentz, who, probably had his best game of the season last week, but still in that performance, way too many turnover-worthy plays throughout. So a little less confident in Fulgham, but like Claypool, I mean, not a 1 week blimp. I mean, him having that go-ahead 42-yard score in week 4 in a game where they couldn't really get anything going. Again, like Claypool, Fulgham has been like the one source of life in this passing game this year. So, D-Jax, Alshon Jeffrey, once their corpses get back out there, like, okay, maybe Fulgham doesn't get quite as many snaps. But again, I find it hard to believe that in an offense that has been struggling as much as they have, the one guy that comes in and gives them some life won't get the ball more. I mean, look at this Eagles offense over the past 12 months. The guys they've had to trot out there between Greg Ward, Josh Perkins, just giving Boston Scott way too big of a role. I mean, they've been looking for someone to step up. And now we got Travis Fulgham, 6'2", 215, not the biggest burner, but, a guy that really has some nice athletic intangibles and did some good things in college. And one of my favorite sites for prospects is a Player Profiler, and their comp for him is Mr. Michael Gallup. So I'm not saying Fulgham is necessarily Michael Gallup, but he's also not some random guy that no one has ever had a positive thought about that went out and had one good week. I think there will be more good weeks ahead for Travis Fulgham. Not willing to say, the wide receiver 2 that Claypool could be, but, similar to the situation a couple weeks ago where I said, please go prioritize Justin Jackson, go prioritize Chase Claypool. But on the other hand of that Justin Jefferson statement was also look at T. Higgins. I think we also need to look at Travis Fulgham behind Claypool, particularly when we consider the cost adjustments. So those are the main ones. A couple quick hits for you guys before we get out of here. Tim Patrick, tough matchup against the Patriots, obviously, but at a minimum, he is a top 2 pass game option in this Broncos offense, which could be worse, considering some of the guys we got to put out there. Brandon Cooks, mentioned last week not to freak out about the goose egg. He's maintained a full-time role throughout this season. Boomer bust type, we get it. He can put up big games and also put up the goose egg. He's not get that Jaguars banged up secondary every single week, but he does get them one more time in the next 6 weeks, and he also gets the Titans, Packers, Browns, Patriots, Lions. So, not one amazing matchup after the other or anything like that, but we will continue to see more big games from Deshaun Watson and company ahead. Henry Ruggs, awesome game. He had the long 70-plus yard touchdown, and then another just really good contested catch deep downfield, but we knew Ruggs could do this. The problem with this is that Derek Carr doesn't consistently throw downfield. Now, he did in week 5. I gave him all kinds of props on the Monday podcast, thanking him for doing just that. It's never been an issue of can Derek Carr throw it downfield. It's will he throw it downfield. And unfortunately with Ruggs, he only had 3 targets in this blow-up game. So he's going to be out there. They drafted him in the top 15 to be, the guy. He's going to get more than 3 targets. But, this was still a situation where I think the really big upside for him going into the year was the thought that he could take over this passing game and be the true number 1. We know that is still Darren Waller, and we know that while week 5 brought out someone different, I'm not quite willing to assume that Carr is going to become this, gunslinger, chucking it downfield to Ruggs every chance he gets. So, Brian Evers coming back. They really seem to like Nelson Aguilar, and to Aguilar's credit, he's been making some plays out there. I just don't have much confidence in this Raiders passing game behind Darren Waller. I know Carr's doing good things, and hey, if you can go get Ruggs, it's helpful to have someone that, has these big games in their range of outcomes. But again, not someone I'm looking to, blow the fab all the way on, and not someone that I would expect more than, boomer bust, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 production from. Happy Mecole Hardman season, everyone. Sammy Watkins expecting to miss some time with his hamstring injury. And yes, the handcuff wide receiver that we've been hyping up on this pod for some time is here. Now, maybe Demarcus Robinson does his thing, but at a minimum, we're now in a situation where it's going to be Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, Travis Kelce out there on the field for the Chiefs. More snaps than not. That's all we can ask for in 4 games without Tyreek Hill. Last season, when this was the case, we saw Hardman go 4 catches, 61 yards and a touchdown, 2 catches, 97 yards and a touchdown, 2 catches, 9 yards, 0 touchdown dud, and then 4 catches for 79 yards. So, he'll be boomer bust to some extent, but you know what? When Patrick Mahomes is under center, a lot of people around him tend to boom. So he is someone that I'm going to be prioritizing getting into lineups of all shapes and sizes starting this week, assuming Watkins is in fact going to miss multiple weeks with this hamstring injury. Finally, last note is on Laviska Shenault. So Minshew, among all receivers that he's targeted at least 15 times, Shenault is averaging team best 10.36 adjusted yards per attempt from Minshew. To Chark, Minshew has averaged 10.35 yards, and no one else is over 10. So truly a situation where, out of everyone we've seen Minshew give at least 15 targets to over the last, season and 5 weeks, it has been Laviska and then Chark as the top 2 options, which I think backs up what we've been seeing. And, good on the Jaguars for continuing to get Shenault more and more involved as a receiver. His targets by game have gone 4, 4, 6, 6, and most recently 8. We haven't seen the same rushing workload, but we know they like him for that. We know this role is still evolving, and we know it's going up in the right direction. So I don't know if we'll ever get, a feature thing out of him. The role we want is, 3 to 5 rush attempts per week with 5 to 8 targets on top of that. We'll see. They clearly love the guy. He's making some big plays, doing some good things in terms of, yards after the catch and breaking tackles. But he is someone to have at the end of the bench because, again, if you're getting this type of workload, 6 to 8 targets per week, we can fire that up anytime while we got guys on bye and while we got injuries happening. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As always, the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast coming to you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday throughout the season. Please check me out on Twitter at iHartitz if you want to know when these podcasts will be out in the morning. And I also got some articles out every day of the week as well. So thank you for listening as always. Before we get out of here, though, one quick shout out to our friends at Monkey Knife Fight. If you want a discount on PFF, do not go on Twitter looking for a discount code. All you got to go to is Monkey Knife Fight. Put $20 in their account while using promo code PFF. That will give you a free PFF Edge annual subscription. So $40 value for just $20. And who's to say you're even going to lose that $20? You can go play daily fantasy and prop games at one of the fastest growing fantasy sports sites in the USA in Monkey Knife Fight. So go to Monkey Knife Fight, deposit your $20 with promo code PFF today to receive your free PFF Edge annual subscription. That's going to do it for me, everyone. Thank you, as always, for listening to the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. And until next time, take care.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.